Very excited to welcome all of you to this accessible travel chat with Michele Erwin and Alan Chaulet from All Wheels Up. All Wheels Up is a really exciting organization that's focused on bringing wheelchairs into the cabin of airplanes. I'll let them speak a little more about their work and what led them here. But as you may have read last week or 2 weeks ago now, I guess, I attended their global forum on wheelchair accessible air travel that happened just outside of Washington, D.C. in Crystal City, and was really a tremendous event. Got to meet with so many people, representatives from all sectors of the industry that are important in making this a reality. So I thought it would be a great time to bring the two of them on to chat with you and share a little bit about their vision and the work that they're up to. So, Michele, would you like to introduce yourself and then Alan as well, and then we can dive into some questions to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. John, again, thank you so much for inviting Alan and myself to just have this really important conversation. But I'm Michele Erwin, and I'm the president and founder of All Wheels Up.
Excellent. And Alan?
Hi, I'm Alan Chaulet. I'm I've been with All Wheels Up for 10 years. I'm our vice president, and I'm disabled myself.
Very good, very good. So I think maybe where I'd like to start, and just this will help us unpack a little bit about, what All Wheels Up is and what it's trying to accomplish. Could you, either of you, maybe starting with Michele, speak to, what led you to get involved in this campaign and to found All Wheels Up so many years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. This started about 13 years ago. I have a child who has spinal muscular atrophy and he uses a wheelchair. And I was taking a flight with him by myself. So I was not traveling with my husband. And, you know, uh, any person can tell you traveling with someone that is, a child that is 3 years old is difficult in and of itself. But now I was traveling with a 3 year old that was also, has a disability and, is paralyzed, is completely floppy. And it was just very difficult. And unfortunately, I just had an extremely bad experience with the flight. And, I just didn't understand why my son couldn't use his wheelchair. We had brought the wheelchair all the way to the jetway. I had to then carry him on board. And let's just say the problems just stemmed from there. And I was just very upset all the way home. And I really just was like, okay, I'm going to join an organization. I want to help this fight. I'm sure there's an organization out there trying to create a wheelchair spot on airplanes. And when I got home, I learned that wasn't the case. And, long story short, I thought it would be easier to, create an organization and start the crash testing myself than go through Congress and the airlines.
Very good. Alan, what connected you with Michele and brought you on board this exciting journey?
Well, so my dream throughout middle school, high school, and college has always been to be an entrepreneur. So I truly believe anyone, including those with disabilities, can create businesses to solve problems and needs. So when I graduated college in 2013, I was thinking about what kind of a business I could create. And I've always been interested in everything startups and technology. And I wanted to go down that route. And I have so many ideas, but the problem of inaccessible travel, which is such a glaring problem, and I'm very similar to Michele. Like no one at all was working on fixing this, and I realized like my skills could help find a solution. So I soon found Michelle and joined her, and we've been working together for 10 years now. And for many of those years, like, it was just us, and everyone thought we were crazy for even like working on this, but like we knew it was possible, as well as the disability community. And we're a great team, and she understands I can only work remotely and can't be there in person at all the places we have to be around the country and the world. And yeah, I never actually met her in person until the global forum, like a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I think you point to something that is a core belief that I have, and that is that, modes of transportation should be accessible to people who use wheelchairs and everyone, because um, so much of what goes on in the world um, involves connection and travel. And as you pointed out, some of the ideas that you have would require flying somewhere to execute on those. Um, and there are many other reasons that people want to travel. I don't judge. I don't judge why people want to travel. I think it's just as valid to travel for business as it is to travel to see your family or to attend a concert if that's what you want. So it's critical that we create a system of aviation that can accommodate everyone's needs and give them the same freedom, to go off on a trip, a spontaneous adventure, to see family, to reconnect over the holidays, whatever it may be. Um, but you're right that, very early on, and I think Michelle spoke to this, after her first trip with her son, she starts to question, well, why can't there be a wheelchair space on the airplane? And that's something that I think every disabled person has asked themselves who has taken a flight. Why isn't this possible? The train that I rode here to the airport, or the city bus that I rode to the airport, I can take my wheelchair inside. I might have a vehicle at home where I can literally roll my wheelchair up a ramp. So why can't it be done in an airplane, which is so much larger than any of these other types of vehicles? Um, but I think that, obviously everyone here and on this call knows that it should be possible. We believe in the need for this to increase accessibility, but many people in the industry um, sort of saw this as a pipe dream early on. And I'm curious, um, you know, how did you go up against that and fight that sort of disdain almost from members of the industry saying, "Oh, it will not be possible," because we know about some, incredible developments that have been covered recently in advancing towards a wheelchair space. Um, but how did you keep going? What gave you the strength to battle through that, and then ultimately change people's minds?
Yeah, the first thing that, Alan and I agreed on was, it always had to be about positive and responsible messaging. We weren't going to blame or shame the industry. We certainly weren't going to make friends if we were all over social media, bad mouthing, the industry for what we're seeing happen today. If we want to change the future, it's about having collaborative and robust conversations on what can we do about the future. We know today stinks, right? But what can we do about tomorrow with drawing a line in the sand and saying what are we going to do about it. And then and the responsible messaging is not over promising something and saying to the community we're going to have something in 2 years. We have to be super realistic. The industry isn't going to take us seriously if we keep saying, oh, we're going to have something for you on an XYZ date. as a nonprofit, that is not something we can do and should be responsible for. That is in the hands of the regulators. But I think what really made the progress was we weren't an organization just advocating for a wheelchair spot and change. We weren't just pounding on a drum saying we want something with no skin in the game. We funded the research to make it happen. We knew this was possible, and we said we know it's possible and we're going to prove it to you. And so we fundraised, we got grants and sponsorships, and we crash tested the first wheelchair securement systems at an FAA approved testing facility. And we brought that to Congress, and we brought it to the stakeholders in 2017, sorry. And, and showed them the crash tests. And we said, here is our proof of concept. And so that is when the industry said, okay, you've got something here. You've proved this could be possible. Okay, show us more, tell us more. And they started asking the questions. The industry started asking us questions. And they said, okay, can you test this next? And so then that's when we really had legs, and we said, okay, we'll fund more work. And so that's what we started doing. In 2018, we crash tested a different set of tie down systems based on what the airlines were looking for. And we brought them back in 2019 and showed them those results. Based on the 2016 crash test that we showed Congress, the 2018 FAA Reauthorization Act was signed with a feasibility study. And that feasibility study was published 2 years later, where the industry, this wasn't, All Wheels Up, this wasn't Michele and Alan saying, a wheelchair spot is possible. It was the industry saying a wheelchair spot was technically feasible. And, we had to hand over all of our crash test data. But we also, the entire industry came together in a roundtable to discuss what they saw. And that's really what gave this project the legitimacy that it needed.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it really is amazing. I remember maybe 2019, I was at the IATA, their first global accessibility forum, and many people were telling me there that a wheelchair space would never happen, that it would not be possible, no airline would ever get on board with it. um but we have seen this shift now in terms of, you know, the feasibility study laid the groundwork showcasing that yes, it's possible. So now what are we as an industry going to do about it? And I think we've seen a lot of different approaches to that. um we don't know for sure when or even maybe if, but strong belief that this will be something that's regulated in the future. um we're not sure when we'll actually see a wheelchair space on the airplane that is bookable for people with disabilities. But it is pretty dramatic now. Just 4 years ago, hearing airline executives and even some advocacy groups saying this will never happen, um, to now at your global forum a couple weeks ago, multiple groups presenting possible solutions, some that are fairly far along in their development process, others that are just lacking funding to get off the ground. Um, what I mean, could you just reflect on that progress and now the industry actually putting their own money in the game to work towards this?
Yeah, I think, the best way to summarize that is, we don't expect the NIH to fund all, cures, right? And so that's where I think, I know we get challenged a lot of like, oh, why don't we, why isn't the FAA or why aren't the airlines funding all of this research? And, that's where, we come in as a nonprofit. We fund a lot of the research to move this along. So yes, we funded the first, proof of concept, but we still have a lot more research to do. And so we funded the very first budget impact study it was very small. It was what we could afford as a small nonprofit, but that actually showed the need for a larger one. The airline said, okay, this is great, show us more. And now in the 2023 FAA Reauthorization Act, there is a large scale budget impact study for the airlines to understand what it's going to not just cost them to implement a wheelchair spot on airplanes, but how will it impact the entire industry? But it's also, everything from cost savings. So, we shouldn't look at it as, a budget impact study as a negative. It's going to also show the cost savings to the industry by implementing it, such as, tarmac turn time efficiency studies and the true number of what it costs for airlines when they damage and destroy wheelchairs. And we have those numbers on our website from the study that we did, but it will be in a congressionally published report, which will probably hold a little bit more clout than ours. But then we have other research out there that it will what we expect is we do the smaller funding, and then these larger organizations like a Boeing, like an Airbus, like an airline, if they so to take it on, they'll take it on in a bigger way, just like we see pharma take on those research projects done at the cure-based nonprofit level.
Yeah,
Right.
and
So I go ahead, Alan, please.
yeah, just at our global forum, like one of the big parts of the research happening is we've had college students that we've been working with, like present. We had several students from Virginia Tech working on their project is called Chairs in the Air. And last year we had several students from the University of Washington and University of Michigan and NIAR at Wichita State, which is great. And I just want to go back to what we were saying before about how we thought like wheelchairs in the cabin was like a pipe dream. And as Michelle was talking about, when we did the first crash test in 2016 for proof of concept, like we thought it was all theoretical, like we were like we thought it may be possible, but like yeah, like the first proof of concept changed everything, and it really opened the door to so much. And yeah, we're really happy with all the research and changes Congress has funded, and yeah, we're looking forward to having them like fund even more, as well as the private industry.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic sort of what we have seen from Congress. A lot of that is due to yours and Michelle's lobbying of legislative leaders to get these things into the reauthorization bills for the FAA. I think one thing that I've thought about, at least maybe in the last year or so, is there has just been a convergence of so many things that are happening that lead us toward the wheelchair space. So, we've had, and I know this isn't something that your organization focuses on directly, but the consumer experiences that folks are having are now being widely reported in the media. We have heard Secretary Pete from the DOT speak about his intention to bring about a wheelchair space in the cabin, and that's a message that he reiterated at the Global Forum a couple of weeks ago. And there are also advocates in high places. Senator Duckworth, who came and spoke to everyone at the summit, is a wheelchair user herself, and understands very clearly many of the challenges that people are facing. And so it seems to me that there's just so much pressure on the industry to get itself going towards delivering on this. And I'd like maybe you to share what your perspective is sort of on where we are right now. Like, where are we today? And what are the steps that are still going to have to be taken, to get us to the finish line?
Yeah, I think, if, you remember, John, our title of our conference this year was Tipping Point for Takeoff. And, that's where we are. We are definitely at the tipping point. There are multiple OEMs working on, solutions now, which I think is fantastic. Last year, when I went to Hamburg, Germany, to the Aircraft Interiors Expo, we knew some people, some organizations rather, were working on, their idea of a wheelchair spot. But I was seeking to talk to the other OEMs that were not working on it, because my message to those OEMs was, we don't want you to be behind. You have to have an option in your seat suite, because if this becomes a mandate down the line, the airlines can't buy a seat suite from you. They're going to go with the guy that has a full seat suite, which includes a wheelchair spot concept. And so that's why you're now seeing, other OEMs, whether big or small, attend our conferences, because they, even if they're not ready to jump in with both feet, they want to know what's going on in the industry. And so I think that's really great in regards to, the breadth of, industry stakeholders now attending our conferences. There are multiple concepts in all different stages of development, which I think is terrific. We have OEMs and airframers investing at the university level, where All Wheels Up is brought in for judging and or mentoring, which we love. We also fund some of those university projects in collaboration. I think that's also a big word here. This is such an enormous project with so many layers, and it is all about collaboration and multiple organizations, having to come together to work on one goal. And you're going to have to share information. I know this is, one of those, oh my goodness, NDA issues and things like that. But I think that's what's really great about our conferences. Everybody puts those issues aside and they're willing to share the information. And if you notice, John, we don't have press at our conference, and that's done deliberately, so everybody can have really robust and honest conversations on how to drive the ball down the field. Now, in regards to, where are we in regards to implementation? Like I've said, that's not our place. As a nonprofit, we're here to just really fund that research, whether it's engineering or support data. But what we can tell everybody here that's, with us today is, wheelchairs are now in the process of being tested, to be crashed as a wheelchair, an airplane seat, right? So they're taking that next step where All Wheels Up tested the tie downs. Another organization or university is testing the wheelchairs themselves. And, the FAA is closely working with that university to see where that goes. Now, that is a 3-year study. So again, any organization putting timelines on anything, like let's start adding up the the years here, right? The wheelchairs are being just tested now under a 3-year study. Then we have the economic impact study, which right now will be done a year after that test is completed. So All Wheels Up has asked for that test to be done congruently and not sequentially, but that's currently where we are in the FAA, Reauthorization Act. Now, we also, the wheelchairs that are being tested are WC19 only. We have to, be super clear about that. This is not a wheelchair that, you are, might be rolled out of the hospital in. We have to be very clear. It has to be a WC19 wheelchair, because those wheelchairs are already tested and, built and, already have regulations. Now, there are tie downs. We've tested a lot of tie downs. Other organizations now are testing tie downs. We have to be very clear. There is no tie down system that is currently approved to be, ready for aerospace. This is still in the development stage. And so I don't, when I know there's organizations out there saying we're going to have something in 2 years, that is for their seat concept only. That is not for the tie downs that are underneath that seat. And so we don't know when that other phase will come. So we have to realize that this is a 2-part project, or even a 3-part project. We have the seat that's going to create the space, and then you have the tie down system, and then you have the wheelchairs. And each three have to be certified separately.
And so, I think maybe so we can clarify a little bit for folks on the call. What is a WC19 standard, and what sorts of wheelchairs comply with that today?
So, John, you did break up a little bit, but so I think you asked what is a WC19 wheelchair, but I didn't get that last sentence.
Yeah, I'm curious if we could clarify for folks the standard, the WC19 standard,
Mhm.
and then also what types of wheelchairs might already comply with that, or are there any at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So a WC19 wheelchair is a chair that passes a 20G crash test. And if you go to, I believe, the RESNA website, or even the University of Michigan UMTREE's website, there is a full list of wheelchairs that already pass the WC19 standards. I'm not going to be able to probably say which ones exactly, but they range from, power chairs to manual wheelchairs to, say, your stroller wheelchairs that, for adults and, older children who need to be pushed. They do exist. So those and all of those are being tested. So I understand, there has been concern from the community that, manual wheelchairs might not be considered. They all are undergoing testing now, under observation by the FAA.
And
Yeah, and
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Alan.
well, just I just want to talk more about that and say, like, on that website, like, you can see the list of like all the exact like models, and like, yeah, it's many of the major like models from like Permobile and Quantum, and yeah, like it's pretty simple for people to see like if their own wheelchair is part of that. And yeah, as Michelle was saying, it's very many like models.
Yeah, and I think something that is also interesting is that some of these projects and also at the summit have wheelchair manufacturer input, because they are going to have to be a part of this process. They're going to want to sell wheelchairs to consumers once the wheelchair space does exist on the plane, that are approved for flight. And there will probably be a standard that's developed off of the WC19 basis, so that chairs can get that sort of seal of approval. And I think that's very important. I think I saw Sunrise Medical and maybe Quantum as well at or I guess Pride Mobility at the Global Forum. It's great to see them engage with this process because they will have a role to play a little bit farther down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely a shout out to Quantum. Quantum has partnered with us since 2018. They have been supplying us wheelchairs for free, for us to literally destroy in a lot of crash tests. So they have been excellent partners to All Wheels Up and believing in us. And Quantum also did join All Wheels Up on a panel for the TRB study, and they spoke to their wheelchairs and WC 19 standards that they currently utilize. Their chairs do incredibly well in crash testing. If you have a Quantum wheelchair, you should be proud.
Yeah, and I think we had talked about this in DC. I definitely want to get that video out of some of your crash testing examples to show people. It's very interesting, amazing to see a wheelchair withstand the forces that they were put under. I think the FAA standard is 16 Gs. Um, so that's tremendous force. It's amazing to see, yeah, wheelchairs that are out here on the market, at least the wheelchair frame anyway, withstanding that level of impact.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Ellen.
well, just I want to say, like, yeah, we're looking to work more with the other manufacturers, and and yeah, just you were talking about some of the videos of the crash tests, and we're working on hopefully like releasing those like online, like we have all the video files and everything, and we're also looking to Michelle can talk about this more, like release some of the slides from the global forum that I think would be very helpful for people to look at.
Yeah, so if people who were registered and attended the conference, they have access to those slides from the presenters. A lot of presenters, did not give us permission to share those slides, but they're, on the link. And then any research that All Wheels Up funds is open sourced, and so if you go to our website under research, there's the papers we did with University of Washington, and others, and other students even come to us and say, hey, you can go, we didn't work with you, but can you post our research here? And it's really become a hub of all research in accessible air travel, and specifically a wheelchair spot. We did just do a floor load test with NIAR. MDA actually funded that, or collaborated on funding with us on that project, and they've been super supportive of us. That actually, we're not going to post that presentation specifically because we are working with NIAR to actually publish an article in an aerospace journal first, and then we will be sharing after that journal article. We will then post videos and all of the post data, but we need to make sure that we're in compliant with what a journal needs. So.
Yeah, and so maybe that leads me to a final question before we move to ask the audience what their thoughts are. Um, Obviously, you guys are involved in so many different aspects of the research that ultimately encourages larger studies that are funded by the government. You are engaged in some of those studies, sort of laying the foundation for a lot of the work that is being done in this space. And I'm just curious, who is supporting this work, sort of behind the scenes? Who's donating money to you, and how can people get involved?
Yeah, so we have an incredible board. I have to say, I always say, we have the hardest working board because we are all volunteers, including Alan and myself. We have our day jobs and we do this we have such a passion, for it. Our board, in addition to just people who are passionate about accessible air travel, we have retired executives now from Boeing and different airlines and different things like that who are really helping us and guide us and make sure that we're, not, I wouldn't say, within the box of what aviation looks like, but, to help us along so we're not wasting money and, sort of making fools of ourselves along the way. But so that's the first thing. We have an incredible board. But in regards to the organizations that are donating to us, I get this question asked a lot, and I always would say we are donated $25 at a time from the wheelchair community who want to see this happen. But what's really great in the last couple of years, I can't say that anymore because we are now, sponsored by major organizations, from everybody from Boeing to Airbus. Expedia is a huge partner of ours. Paralyzed Veterans of America, MDA, a lot of advocacy groups that have taken on the platform of accessible air travel are now helping us, host our conference and things like that. So we're really grateful for the support, and that's because we put in the work beforehand, and so now we're seeing the appreciation on the other side.
Yeah, and I
And
want to
so,
talk.
go ahead, Alan. I apologize.
So just yeah, I want to talk more about the disability community because from the beginning, like we all knew it could be possible, and just we've had so many great people from the disability community, like to help fund our first crash test. Like I remember some of the crowdfunding that we did, and yeah, and they really helped us financially at the beginning when like no company was interested. And yeah, we are talking about some of those advocacy groups like Wounded Warrior, United Spinal, Christopher Reeve Foundation. They were at like the working group, and just like we've had so many disabled people work like with us over the years, like in our organization and also outside of it. And like, yeah, it's very personal to like everyone in the disability community and their families. Like me and Michelle, our families haven't gone on family vacations in like a decade because of how inaccessible airplanes are. And that's the case for like millions of families like around the world. And yeah, like they've been a big like yeah, like they've been a very big help over the years. And like, yeah, we have so many great people that all want to help, all want to volunteer and do things. And yeah, we're always working to like have more opportunities for people to be involved.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, everyone on the call or who watches the recording after this is published can visit the website at allwheelsup.org. And that's where you'll be able to find all of this research that Michele and Alan and their board has worked tirelessly on to put together and to fund. There are also some ways to support and donate to the organization on the website. If you're able to, it's a great place to direct some of your charitable donations. Really excited with the work you're doing. I left the Global Forum a couple weeks ago, just so inspired. You're right that there were a lot of challenging conversations had, but I felt like people in the room were really focused on this work, and it was exciting to see so many different um, airlines, manufacturers, OEMs, all invested with their time and resources in this work. So very excited. I, of course, on my site will, keep following all the developments as they come about. Some are really exciting. Met a lot of people in DC whose stories I want to share. But I'm just so glad that you were willing to come chat with all of us today. And I'd like to ask anyone in the audience here if you have any questions for Alan or Michele, to unmute, turn on your mic and ask away.
Yeah, and I just want to add that people can donate like in so many different ways. Like we have it listed on our website, but they can do it through Facebook or Instagram or website, text, and just, yeah, so many different ways that we have listed there. And we hope to like update the website like in the future.
Awesome, Alan. Well, we have a raised hand here from Malcolm. Malcolm, would you like to speak?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Michele. We've talked way in the past. First time I've actually gotten to almost
see each other.
almost see each other in person. And John, I think you probably know that I'm a avid reader or watcher of your your blog and website. I think, John, you made a really good point that I think we're going to see airlines really get excited if we're offering ways that they can, up their ability to deliver on the customer experience. And I think that there's three things that we need to work on towards that end. The wheelchair space, the accessible lavatories that we've not talked about. And the key to getting both of those is also dealing with the need for adequate aisle width at the front part of the airplane. And I think the only way to get adequate aisle width on 737s and 320 class aircraft is to get the airlines to think of, sort of outside the box and come up with a sort of a mid-class arrangement, behind first class and in front of what I would call steerage, and come up with a comfy class that goes beyond what they're doing now. Like, Delta Airlines have comfort class. They give you an extra 4 inches. But a real mid-class would be a 2x3 seating instead of, like the Airbus is introducing in their 220s. With a 2x3 seating, you get enough aisle space so that you can move either personal chairs or even onboard aisle chairs, which, by the way, also need a huge amount of improvement. You get enough aisle space to be able to maneuver from the front entrance to the wheelchair space to the lavatory. And the only way to get accessible lavatories on the Boeing 737 class airplane, which is like 99% of all domestic travel now. The only way to get maneuverability is to have the wider aisles and be able to move between front entrance, lavatory, and either the wheelchair space or any other seating that's used by people with some mobility to get between their seat and lavatory. If we deal with all those things together, I think that we can get an airline like Delta to say, if we can vastly improve the customer experience over, say, United Airlines. And I use those examples, for good reason.
Yeah,
I think that an airline could really get behind, doing this, but we need to have a sort of a vision of a new aircraft layout.
So, John, I think I can, or Malcolm, we had a spatial study done at Boeing with one of the concepts that's being done, and the wheelchair. There was multiple wheelchairs, multiple sizes of wheelchairs that were able to go through the airplane door, make the turn around the monument, and basically hit that first seat, and do the turnaround to get into that wheelchair spot. O Wheels Up doesn't talk lavatories. That's not our space. We're not experts in labs. I know organizations like Paralyzed Veterans of America are really the cornerstone of making that happen. I do believe that there's rulings, so I think there's some really positive outcomes in that space. And then just from knowing what other projects that are being funded, I think there's projects out there in regards to looking at aisle widths. It's just not something I can speak about, but it's being looked at. But also, is it going to end up being the right thing to do?
And I
Yeah,
think
and
just to add to that,
can I just follow up on that?
oh yeah,
Yeah, I just want to say, like, there's a big financial incentive for the airlines because in the U.S. there's 4 million wheelchair users, and in Europe it's like another 4 or 5 million, and it's tough to see some of the data from ASA, but like, yeah, like we expect there to be millions and millions, like more as well, and people with disabilities, like we spend money on travel, like we spend several tens of billions of dollars. That's with air travel not accessible. Like it could be so much higher, and like accessible tourism, like it's like a pretty big industry. Like there's some great destinations around the world, and having a wheelchair spot on airplanes would be, yeah, it would help like millions of people be able to see those places, and also with the baby boomer population entering their elderly years, like just the customer experience for airlines is just going to be so important, and even more important in the future. And I think the airlines do recognize that.
yeah, Alan. I just want to add one more thing for Malcolm's question, then we'll get to Ginny here who has her hand raised. Um, there are many different ideas on how to solve for these problems being proposed. I think the Delta solution that we've seen, along with some of the others that are like it, um, imagines the wheelchair space in the front row of the airplane, where where it's easy where it's easy to to get a wheelchair into that front row. There are some options that could be explored in terms of having an expandable lavatory at the front of the aircraft. That's something that I've heard some conversation about at some of the OEMs that are working on these solutions. But there are others who have proposed that the wheelchair space be at the rear of the aircraft. And that might work in places like Europe, um, where a lot of flights don't park at a jet bridge; they're at a remote stand, and wheelchair users typically board from the back of the airplane as it is. Um, that could be an option. I think that what we're not going to see is one solution that is adopted by every airline. And so that's why I'm encouraged at the competition that's coming about, because just like for standard seats on airplanes and other interior features that we see, there are going to be 10 companies working on this at some point down the line, and they're all going to have um, different takes on the wheelchair space. Hopefully there will be a clear standard that they have to build off of, just as there is for seats today. But I think we're going to see a lot of innovation come from this. Um, and I think we can have all of those things: an accessible lav, access to the wheelchair space, and the space itself. Um, it's just a matter of tracking the development and ensuring that disabled people have a voice in that development process. And I think that's something that Michele and Alan and everyone at All Wheels Up are focused on, as well, including all of us in the conversation. So, Jenny, I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask your question, and I do see some in the comments that I'll get to as well. Jenny? Jenny, I think I think you're having some audio issues. It's not coming through clearly for me. Maybe you would like to exit and rejoin.
Yeah, or
I'm
she
just
can
going.
also put in the question in the comments so we can answer it there.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at these questions. I think we'll start. I see the one here from Kelly about thoughts on what United has recently announced, that you'll be able to enter in the dimensions of your wheelchair and it'll recommend the planes that are best for you. I don't really think that we should spend too much time answering this here, but I do have an article coming out soon where I am taking a look at that. The short version of it is, in my opinion, um, it's great. It's great that people will, understand the wheelchair dimension, the cargo door dimensions of airplanes. Um, that is a big reason that wheelchairs are damaged and they get turns on their sides because they just don't fit into the cargo hold. Um, but there are also some questions that I still have about, forcing people onto more expensive flights. Um, I feel like there's already a solution, at least if you're in the know, that, my wheelchair won't fit on this airplane, but I'll book the cheaper flight, and then call the airline and get the refund. Um, so I don't know that it's anything truly dramatic, but it will be good to have sort of cargo door dimensions listed in the course of the booking process, because most airlines don't provide that information, and when they do, you've got to multiple clicks to actually get to that information. um, and that's stuff that I published on my site many years ago, and I still think it's probably the most important thing I've ever written, but not enough people read it. So I'm glad the airlines will be providing that info.
Yeah,
John,
Um,
and
John, that the dimensions on your website. I just want to let you know it is vital. It is important. I've actually shared it with the ACAA coalition to share out with all of their followers. And if it's not something on our website, it definitely should be there. But agree. I think as a community of wheelchair users, we should definitely be advocating and for whether it's our own safety of our wheelchair, safety for ourselves, and we really should be educated on these things. And it's unfortunate that we do, but the information is out there, and we should all definitely check out your website for it.
yeah, and as part of the Mobile Act, which Senator Duckworth introduced, that's going to be in the 2023 FA reauthorization that hopefully passes by the end of the year. Like, it's going to require all the airlines to report like the dimensions of their cargo hold. So we think that's going to make a big difference. Like in the 2018 FAA reauthorization, when they required airlines report how many wheelchairs they break every month, like that was very big, and it helped. Yeah, I think it helped like everyone with a disability, like who wants to travel.
yeah, so absolutely, Alan, totally agree, and I'm excited that it will hopefully soon become law once Congress gets back in order and in conducting business. Uh, okay, so I see this question from Tiffany, and it sort of carries on with this conversation we've just had about um, wheelchair dimensions and will they fit on the airplane. Um, if it doesn't fit upright, what carriers are traditionally doing is tipping it on its side. Um, that's easier than kicking the passenger off and reaccommodating them. Um, but I have been asking carriers recently, sort of, what is their specific policy for handling situations like this? I've got a couple of answers. Some carriers are very open about this, but not everyone has responded. So I definitely want to collect that information and share it out. Um, I recently spoke with Alaska Airlines, and they have a certain aircraft type that a power wheelchair like mine can't fly on because it's too heavy. Um, it's an interesting situation that definitely needs a little bit of unpacking and more research on my point. But in the meantime, the carrier is, putting people on other flights that work for them, even if that's on a different carrier. So I feel like that is something that we should see from every airline. But I'm just not sure if that is the case. Are there any other questions here
Well,
in the
just I
chat?
want, yeah, I just want to add that yeah, lots of the damage that is done to wheelchairs happens like when they're turned on our side, like that's like what I've noticed.
Okay, so Jenny, who was having the audio issues, has just shared. She said that she is in a power wheelchair and she's amazed that airlines can't figure out a way for us to stay in our chairs. Even in her vehicle, she's very well secured using a Q-straint system. And I believe, Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a study done with Q-straint. That is what you have been using in the crash test, um, uh, that you've been involved with.
Exactly. The Q strain is, I learned in 2011, was crash tested at 20 Gs. In that time in 2021, not knowing what the crash test standards were for airplane seats, learned really quickly that it was 16 Gs for airplane seats. And so that's when I started working with Q strain and the FAA to see if we could have the FAA crash test the Q strains tie down systems. Long story short, they wouldn't take on that project, and so that's why we did. But we've crash tested. So far, we've crash tested, I think, 3 different types of Q strain tie down systems so far. One from the basic system to their I think it's the QLK 150, which is the center bolt lock system, and then the QRT 360, which is what most of us have in our wheelchair accessible minivans and Disney rides. And All Wheels Up just received funding. We will be benchmarking a lot of other different systems from Q-Strain and maybe other companies as well. We know that the Q1, which we just did crash test a month ago, is a fan favorite with the airlines right now, and the industry in total, or the aviation industry, but we really need to also backtrack and make sure that we're not missing out on anything. So All Wheels Up is benchmarking like the tie down system that Q-Straint uses in speed trains in Europe, and just really making sure that we have all of the information before we dive into one specific system.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think either the students from Virginia Tech or from Michigan um, were testing a different system for securement in some of their pitch and roll tests. So um, definitely a lot of potential solutions out there. And totally agree. Totally agree with Jenny that a lot of these problems I feel like we already have solutions for. It's just a matter of adapting them to the aircraft environment. And that unfortunately will take a lot of work, but um, I think that, all of this gives us confidence that we actually are going to see this at some point. As far as a timeline, we don't have that, but
Yeah.
continuing to work to advance all of the little things that need to happen to come together for the final product.
Yeah, John, I think while there isn't necessarily a true timeline, I think what we can really see is, I know I've been challenged where some people say, oh, 13 years is, too long. However, if we really look at air travel and we look at, the airplane seats that, they were selling and we were flying in 1980s, it's the same seats that we're sitting in today. We have really been able to change the mindset of a very slow moving and conservative industry. And it's all because we are helping them get to, to that idea of, a wheelchair spot. And it's because we're helping them invest in that, and we're giving them, we're answering all of their questions. There's a lot of questions with this. And instead of us saying, figure it out, we're saying, we're going to help you figure it out and we're going to fund it. And I think that's why, there's a lot of respect for this idea now, is because we're being a part of the solution versus saying, you guys figure it out for us.
Yeah, and when we started, like when I started in 2014, like nothing at all was happening, and just like so much exciting stuff is happening every day. It's going really fast. Like in terms of like, yeah, slow moving things like the government and the aviation industry, like we think it's going really, really fast. And yeah, we think like, yeah, that it's the pace is gonna pick up like a lot.
Well, we've come up on the hour here, so I think we'll end here. But I'd just like to say, on behalf of everyone here in the larger community, to Alan and Michelle, thank you both so much for all the hard work you're doing to advance this concept, um, and to advocate for the freedom of wheelchair users in air travel. And thank you also for joining me here today. Um, Very grateful for all the insight that you've shared and the questions that you've answered. And just want to remind everyone that you can find all the things that we've talked about and more on the All Wheels Up website at allwheelsup.org. So many great resources there, and more things being added all the time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, John. It's always great speaking with you.
Absolutely. Well, take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and for your readership. Really appreciate it, and talk to you soon. Take care.